Welcome to Life Happens, where Texans come to protect their legacy and prepare for the second half of life. Join your host, attorney Kim Hegwood of Your Legacy Legal Care, and our weekly guest as we navigate the challenges that emerge as life happens. Now here's your host, Kim Hegwood.
Good morning and welcome to Life Happens with me, Kim Hegwood, and our very special guest today is Susan Cushman. Good morning, Susan.
Morning, Kim. Thanks for having me.
And Susan we're going to talk today. She's an author, and the title of our thing together is Mother and Daughter Faces Alzheimer's Together. And so let's talk briefly about, or maybe not so briefly, you wrote a book about your relationship with your mom. And can you tell our listeners a little bit about that?
Sure. The name of the book is Tangles and Plaques, A Mother and Daughter Face Alzheimer's. And the way the book came about is during the last 8 years that my mother was in a nursing home, I wrote blog posts, like tons of them. And I decided, actually, some of my readers suggested, why don't you put these together into a book? So I gathered 60 of those blog posts and put them together into a book and named it Tangles and Plaques and published it. It was my first published book in January of 2017. My mother had just died in May of 2016. So anyway, the hard part was over. So writing the book was not hard. Living it before that was what was hard, But writing it had pretty much been written.
So, well, I'm very sorry about your loss, and but why the name Tangles and Plaques? That's very unusual. I mean, to me, that doesn't say, "Hey, this is a memoir about my mom." So,
yeah, I know. Well, the tangles are these twisted fibers of a protein called tau, T-A-U, which build up inside the brain cells, and plaques are deposits of a protein fragment called beta amyloid. And it builds up in the spaces between the nerve cells. Alzheimer's disease prevents the cell's factory from running well, hence memory loss. The tangles and the plaques take over is what happens. And then, of course, as I wrote in the first part of the book, Tangles and Plaques, I wrote that you'll find that the tangles and plaques aren't only in our brains, but often in our relationships, because I had a very tangled relationship with my mother. So it was kind of a double use in the title there.
So we have clients that don't necessarily have the best relationship with their parents. I'm blessed. My mother is blessed. She has a great relationship with her kids. And so, but it's my understanding that your relationship with your mom was a little challenging.
Yeah.
And so can you talk to me just briefly about that? And then I want to know, once we do that, I'd really kind of like to know if Alzheimer's changed it or how it affected it.
Yeah. My mother was probably abused by her father. We don't really know that, but most of her life, she was very critical of others and eventually also drank a lot. And that combination, she could be pretty mean, pretty challenging as a mother. Most of my life, I mainly remember her telling me I was fat, my hair was bad, not praising me for the good things I did. And I tried to be the good girl. My brother his response to my mother was just to kind of go wild in the other way. Mine was to try to be perfect, to try to get her praise, which I rarely really got. And it's interesting because mom could be amazing in some ways. Like she was Miss Holiday. Every holiday, decorated the house to the hilt, lots of presents, taught me how to decorate and wrap presents. She was very creative, but she was also super critical of me. So some of that resulted in me having struggles with eating disorders and some struggles with alcohol and things like that, just because of the way mother treated me my whole life. And I know some people whose loved ones have Alzheimer's and they were really sweet beforehand and then they became kind of mean with Alzheimer's. It affects everybody's brain differently. But with my mother, the opposite happened. As she began to forget things, it was like she forgot that part of her that would be critical. And every time I'd go see her in the nursing home, she would compliment me. Oh, your hair looks so pretty. Did you just get it done? Oh, I love that outfit. And she wouldn't even say it makes you look slim. because that would have meant that she's still being critical. She would just say, "You look so pretty," or "I love that outfit," and that sort of thing. One time, I took some coloring books to the nursing home and some crayons, and there were pictures of flowers because she loved flowers and had been in a garden club and all of that. And I said, "Mom, I thought we would color some of these flowers together." So I have a whole, chapter about us coloring flowers together, and we would color and color and we'd finish it, and I would tear the sheet out and put it up on her little wardrobe where she could see it. And it felt like the kindergarten kid putting her art up on the refrigerator when my mama would look at it and say, "Oh, Susan, you are such a good artist." Of course, all we were doing was coloring in a coloring book. But I cried, because it just felt so wonderful that she loved that one thing that I was doing.
Yeah, parental relationships are usually difficult, and so
That can be.
and definitely, and so you went to you said your mom was in a facility, and so in a nursing home, and so did you have to care for her at home, or were you more of a long distance caregiver?
Yeah, I was in Memphis. She was in Jackson, Mississippi, 200
Okay.
miles away. And I offered for her to come live with us. My father had died young when he was 68. So she'd been alone for a number of years. She was in her mid 70s at that point. And I offered for her to come live with us. We had a guest room with a bath and everything. And she begged me not to. And I said, "Well, Mom, it's either come live with us or it's assisted living." And she said, "I'll do assisted living if I can stay in Jackson." So we found a wonderful assisted living place for her. And she was there 3 years. The hard part of that was I had to clean out her house, and she was a hoarder almost, and sell her house and get her moved in. About the same time, I was uh, cleaning out her house, selling her house, and getting her. Oh, I had to take her car away about the same time. So that worked out well because in the assisted living, the shuttle takes you everywhere you need to go.
Yeah.
And she adjusted really quickly. I mean, within a couple of months, she felt like Elizabeth, her new best friend there, had always been her best friend. It's her little world. She was happy in that little world for several months. It was kind of amazing. And she got really good care. And then after about 3 years, she fell and broke her hip. So then she had to go into rehab and then nursing home care for the rest of her life. So during the time when she was in assisted living, I drove down there about twice a month for those 3 years, as needed. And then once she went to nursing home care, she really didn't need me, but I wanted to be with her and she needed to see me. So I ended up, for those 8 years, I would go about once a month. And of course, behind the scenes, I was taking care of everything: legal, financial, medical, all the paperwork. One really good thing that happened that your listeners would be interested in knowing is when I realized she was going to run out of money, I went to Medicaid. And I applied for Medicaid 6 months before she was going to be out of money. And it worked really well. And so about the time she was going to run out of money, Medicaid kicked in. And thankfully, it made up the difference between her Social Security and my dad's little bit of retirement. It made up the difference. And those last 8 years in the nursing home, we didn't have to pay. I mean, so it worked like a charm. So my advice is do that early. Don't wait until your parent is out of money, to do that. And my other advice because I know you're a lawyer, is when my mother still had her brains about her, we went to the lawyer and to the bank. We opened an account with my name and her name. She made me durable power of attorney for everything, and I completely took over her finances. And I was so blessed that she trusted me to do all of that, because then while she was in assisted living, she only had a debit card and access to one of her accounts where I just kept a few $100s in for her to have spending money as she needed. And then I had the account where her Social Security came in, where I paid all her bills, and she couldn't access that and accidentally do something bad with it. Like she had begun to give money away to a couple of people that she shouldn't have been giving money away to, for example. So I protected her by separating that out. And it was the best move. It really made such a difference.
We tell clients all the time, get your paperwork in order, get good paperwork in order, because Medicaid crisis planning is not fun.
Right.
And you never really want to wait till the last minute, because if there's problems, they're hard to cure at the last minute.
Right.
And so, and we do that, a lot of that in my elder law practice. We do Medicaid crisis planning, we do pre-planning. We try to get clients in, like your mom, when they first get diagnosed, so you don't have to worry about, who's going to take over, what's going to happen,
Right.
things like that. And so
The thing we waited too late to do was to get her tested for long-term care insurance, which my husband and I've done that. We'll talk about that later. But for my mom, by the time we got her tested for that, her dementia was already showing enough that we could not get long-term care insurance for her. But as it turned out, the Medicaid did what that would have done. So for us, it worked out. But that's another thing. If your person agrees to be tested for that early enough, that can be a good thing.
yeah, we recommend a lot of the hybrid products, so life insurance, little bucket of long-term care kind of stuff, because then you get something. It's not a traditional long-term care insurance.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
that's always helpful for clients.
Yeah.
So let's talk about more about you taking care of mom. And so I think somewhere probably in the book, I'm not exactly sure where, you talk about humor when
Yeah.
you're caring for someone with Alzheimer's.
Yeah.
So let's talk about humor, because it's difficult sometimes. One of my longtime friends' mom had Alzheimer's, and I'd go visit her, and she'd ask me the same question over and over and over again.
Right.
Within a 30-minute time frame, she probably asked me the same question 20 times.
Right.
So how do you keep your sense of humor when you feel like you don't have any humor left to
Right.
have?
Yeah, you have to enter their world. This kind of goes with having a sense of humor. Like my mom and I would be sitting out on the patio at her nursing home, and she would start talking about how she had designed the landscaping there, and what a great job they did with her designs. And of course she didn't have anything to do with it. And I would just say, "Oh, Mom, you did such a beautiful job. This is such a lovely space." You never correct them. You never ask them questions that are going to confuse them, and you just enter their world with them. And then when funny things happen, as I wrote about this in my blog, at first I was afraid people were going to think I was being irreverent or making fun of her or something, but I wasn't. I was just trying to show that you have to have a sense of humor. One of the stories is called Effie and the M&Ms, and M&Ms were her favorite candy until they weren't anymore, until she forgot what they were. So the trip, when I went, I always took her different things. She loved cookies from McAllister's Deli. She loved M&Ms, real specific things, and we would sit and visit and have her favorite snack. So the last time I took her M&Ms, she did not remember what they were. And and I put some in a little cup for her because she couldn't handle the bag. And she said, "What are those?" And I said, "Mom, those are M&Ms. Those are your favorite candies." "What am I supposed to do with them?" "Well, you eat them. They're a snack." "How do I eat them?" So I showed her, and I took some, I put them in my mouth, and I ate them, and boy, these are good. Why don't you try some? She took some and put them in her mouth and just sat there.
Oh, no.
And then after a minute, she said, "They're not moving around in there." Well, I cracked up laughing, because they're not going to move around in there. I said, "I know, Mom, you have to chew." She starts chewing, and then her face lights up. And then she's like, "Wow, those are really good. What are they?" "Mom, those are M&Ms. Those are your favorite, And I have several stories that are kind of like one's called The People in the Box, because in the dining room, they had a big flat screen TV on the wall, and she would be watching it, and she couldn't determine reality versus what was in the TV. Like there was a snowstorm in Minnesota or something, and we were in Mississippi, and she was like, "Oh dear, do I need to get my boots? Look, it's snowing, and one thing and another." And at some point, she said some comment, and I can't remember what it was, but I wrote about it in the book, which was 6 years ago. And I said, "Mom, where did you hear that?" "Well, from the people in the box."
Yeah.
And that's what she called the people on the TV, So there were lots like that. There was a woman who ate at her dinner table that I got to know pretty well, who was real upset one day because she said, "I can't find my panties." Well, she was in a diaper.
Mhm.
So that's not really funny, but it was the way she said it and the way we all joked about it at the dinner table that, when I was visiting. So you do have to have a sense of humor or else it's just morbid because it's terrible. It's a horrible disease. But yeah, so hopefully, well, people must have liked my funny stories because they did ask me to put them in a book. So anyway.
And so I can appreciate that. And so a lot of children that have parents with Alzheimer's worry about themselves. Is that something you face?
Every day, every day. I'm 72. My mom was in her mid 70s when her dementia kicked in enough that she needed to go to assisted living. So I notice, and a lot of times when I can't remember something or I can't think of a word, I'm a writer and it drives me nuts when I can't think of a word. But my husband or a friend will say, "Oh, I do that all the time. Don't worry about it. I do that all the time." But eventually my husband agreed with me that there might be something there. So we had me tested and got long-term care insurance. That's the first thing we've done. And it's really good long-term care insurance through Minnesota Life. And it's the kind of thing where you buy the policy and then if you don't need it at some point, you get it back.
Even better. And
Even
so,
better. Now, they've used your money to invest during those years, but that's okay because we know it's secure. If I do need it, it pays really well for nursing home care. So say I get cancer instead and I'm gonna die in 6 months, we can get it back because I
yeah.
don't need long-term care for that. So what we haven't done yet, because we just haven't found the right person, is to do cognitive testing on me, to decide if there's something preliminary we should do. Just last night on the national news, they talked about a new drug that may slow Alzheimer's
Mhm.
just last night on the national news. So
Yep.
that's encouraging to hear because the drugs my mom was on didn't seem to make much difference. There were two of them that were real popular at the time. And how do you know if they're helping? Because how do you know how bad the person would be at that point without them? I don't know how they medically figure that part out. But I think at some point, we may have me tested to see if there's something we should be doing. I'm doing all the things they say to do. I'm writing books. I've published 9 books. I play Scrabble. I do Wordle. I keep my brain busy. I read. I travel. I exercise. I sort of eat healthy some of the time. So, all I can do, but I am anxious about it and I try not to be. I try to pray about it and be peaceful about it, but it's hard not to be anxious because my mother's mother, I forgot to say, my mother's mother also died from Alzheimer's. So I would be third generation. And the interesting thing was my mother's mother spent her last years in the same nursing home in Jackson, Mississippi that my mother ended up in. And I have pictures in my book of my mom next to her mother in the lobby, and her mother's in a wheelchair. My mom is visiting her. And then I have a picture of me and my mom there in the same nursing home. Excellent care. I was really thankful for that. One of my children has said, "Mom, I'll never let you go in a nursing home. You would live with us." And I'm saying, "No, you can't do that. There are facilities that are made for this, and we have the money for it. I know you love me, but that is what you need to do. And my kids are completely aware of what I want, and I feel very good about that, and very thankful that we had the money so that they won't have to deal with that. But I mean, I was really glad when my mother said no when I asked her to live with us. It was like, I think guilt made me ask her, but it would have been awful. It would have been hard on both of us, and pretty soon I wouldn't have physically been able to care for her. For a while I could have, but but I didn't want to feel selfish or guilty, so I offered, and then she said no, and so I've already told my kids no, that I wouldn't
Me
live.
too.
Yeah,
And I told my kids no too. Said, nope, you are not moving me in. I don't want you taking care of me. So
right,
I got plans in place. I'm like you, not doing it.
right.
So,
Right.
you
Now,
know,
I wouldn't mind, like, if my husband were to die and they wanted me to live with him and I didn't have dementia, that's a whole different story. If they had a
mhm.
mother-in-law wing or something like that, I wouldn't necessarily be opposed to that. But as long as I can be independent, I want to, and
Yeah, I want to be able to return the favor of leaving my dirty dishes, everywhere, and my, clothes on the floor that they have to pick up. And, I want to be able to return the favor, for the things I had to do over the years. And so I saw that in a joke once, and oh my God, it just stuck with me. It was just so funny.
It is funny.
All right. So tell our listeners how they find you so they can get some more of your books.
Well, easily. My website is just simply www.susancushman.com. My 9 published books are all on Amazon. Of course, I love it when people buy them at your local independent bookseller, and all you have to do is ask for it, and they will order all 9 of them. I have 3 novels, a short story collection, 2 memoirs, and 4 anthologies that I edited. So there's a variety out there. But Tangles and Plaques, again, was my first book. And the reason it has yarn all over the front is because I thought it looked like things were tangled, for the cover, And so I hope people will get it, and I hope it will help them if they're having to traverse those same difficult waters.
Yes, that is true. And so thank you so much for being on the show today, and I appreciate it immensely.
Thank you very much for having me.
All right. Have a great day.
Thank you, you too.
Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of Life Happens with Kim Hegwood. Be sure to tune in every Thursday at 10 a.m. wherever you listen to your podcast as we navigate through the challenges that emerge as life happens. The content of this podcast does not establish an attorney-client relationship or constitute attorney-client privilege, legal, medical, financial, or any other professional advice.